While the world outside was in chaos after Aileen's heart attack, the dragon was taking a deep nap by the hot bath. The heart attack had passed. Her breathing was now calm and steady. A while later, her forehead furrowed, and she made a few soft noises. Suddenly, Aileen shot up, propping both hands on the floor, her face filled with confusion. What's this? Am I still alive? The dragon thought she was still dreaming. Looking down at her limbs, feeling the clear sense of touch, Aileen was finally certain she was very much alive. So what happened to the dragon's heart? Staring at the heart beating steadily in her chest, Aileen grew even more bewildered. What happened here? There might be only one place to find the answer. Aileen cast her gaze at the orb placed neatly on the red carpet, glowing with a gentle light. She held it softly, not even having time to ask the system before numerous notification windows popped up right in front of her eyes. It seemed as if they had been holding back, waiting for her to touch the orb before jumping out to report. Messages like, "You have consumed honey jelly," and "Tower Farmer Park Sejun has completed the quest," flashed before her. All strange words. It took Aileen a moment to grasp the situation. Sejun? Huh? So I called him at the last moment? She looked at the orb, mumbled, "This is so embarrassing." As the tower manager, the black dragon always wanted to protect Sejun silently, showing him that her power was more than enough to give the farmer whatever he desired. Yet, this happened, exposing a part of her helplessness to him. But the matter had passed. Now, Aileen was curious and asked the orb how he managed to stabilize the dragon's heart. And what was that honey jelly? Surely, leveling up his beekeeping skills must have unlocked a new item for him to farm. Just the name honey jelly sounded sweet already. Aileen suddenly felt a pang of regret. She had eaten it while unconscious, so she had no idea how it tasted. Enhancing talents, it must be the perfect item for her current condition, right? The dragon quickly regained her spirit. Ahem, Aileen Fritani, as the great black dragon, showing proper gratitude to those who helped you, is the true meaning of being a dragon from the prestigious Fritani family. Her face lit up mischievously, her eyes glancing into the corner of the room. She felt pretty satisfied with her own idea. So I gotta reward him, right? The corner of the room shimmered without needing candlelight, glittering invitingly. A pile of gold coins formed a small mound, interspersed with a few chests and various kinds of weapons that looked expensive and brand new. The heap of treasures was so large that Aileen could even climb onto it. She dug around inside, finding familiar items like the magical sword Apophis, the gay bulg, and even the holy sword Excalibur. Weapons of all shapes and types, but they were all for combat. After rummaging for a while, Aileen pulled out a tiny skewer like the ones used to eat fruit, feeling utterly confused. There wasn't anything tailored for farming or crop support, just stuff for warriors. Nothing good enough to give him. Leaving the treasure room, Aileen walked away, arms crossed, muttering to herself. There must be something, some item that Sejun, the farmer of the tower, needs. But for farming, what does one need while farming? Just as she was taking her steps, Aileen suddenly halted. Right in front of her, under the hexagonal skylight, stood a meticulously carved black dragon statue, so lifelike that it seemed ready to take flight. Of course, the model dragon wasn't the current Aileen. It was an older dragon, much more aged than her. Upon seeing the statue, Aileen froze, her face cycling through various emotions before ending with a satisfied smile. Sejun would definitely like this. As for what she would do with the statue, well, that would be revealed soon. For the past few days, the fields on the 99th floor had been free from the threat of the corrupted Ents, and the diligent farmers had plowed it to stretch endlessly to the horizon. The vibrant green beautifully highlighted the stone brick house with its dark green thatched roof. It was midday break. No one was working in the fields. Everyone was snoring away on the cool wooden floor. Kong lay snuggled under his father's arm, while Sejun snored beneath his straw hat, surrounded by the rabbit siblings. All of them, having worked hard on the fields, fell into a deep sleep the moment they lay down. A faint ting sound woke Sejun up groggily. He glanced at the message board. The tower manager thanked you for saving her. It took the young man a few seconds to realize Aileen was messaging him. He quickly sat up, anxiously calling out, "Aileen, are you okay?" The little ones beside him had no idea Sejun was awake, except for Black Rabbit, who immediately perked up at the sound. He saw another message appear, saying the tower manager's body had gotten better thanks to him, and he let out a sigh of relief. Through the mission in the status window, I found out why you particularly like cherry tomatoes, Sejun nervously asked in a low voice. Did my fields put pressure on your dragon heart? Was it tough for you? A new message popped up with Aileen's words denying it. She said it wasn't because of the tower's farmer. The seizures typically happened every 10 years, so the seizure should have occurred earlier, but this time, it lasted much longer than expected. It seemed that thanks to the tower farmer, the dragon's heart had recovered somewhat, delaying the seizure. Sejun let out an understanding, "Oh," and scratched his head in relief. "If you say so, I feel a bit more at ease. I thought I was the cause." Recalling the moment when he turned pale, thinking he was the reason the dragon ended up in that state, Sejun finally felt cheerful again. Suddenly remembering the bag at his waist, Sejun called out, "Eileen, take more of this. The poison honey bees made some more earlier. Fortunately, it seems like the honey jellies that they made helped your dragon heart." He was feeling pleased, but then a notification appeared, freezing him in place. The tower manager said she felt ashamed of being the constant recipient of favors. She wanted to repay the debt of saving her life first. Sejun was taken aback. He muttered the message to himself, curious about how Eileen planned to repay him. A new mission appeared. Shout out Eileen to the sky. The reward, something really big and good. The sentences were both short and mysterious. Sejun placed his feet on the floor, seeing the message urging him, the manager saying he had to shout out loud first. "Hey, is that dangerous?" The reply was vague. Eileen didn't know if it was dangerous or not, so she wanted him to shout it in an empty space outside the house. Feeling more puzzled, Sejun muttered again, "That sounds kind of scary." Kwang, who liked risky things, immediately told his father, "Dad, you mustn't doubt Sister Eileen." Despite his doubts, Sejun went along with it. He and the rabbits and bears moved about 50 meters away from the house. This should be enough, right? He thought. It wasn't clear how big the big and good thing was. Sejun took a deep breath, filling his lungs, and shut his eyes tight, cupping his hands around his mouth to make his voice echo loudly. "Eileen!" The little ones gathered around like they were watching an exciting show. They looked up at Sejun, who shouted once, then twice, then 3 times, each call louder than the last, unsure of how much was enough. After 4 tries with no noticeable change, Sejun scratched his face and asked, "Is that good enough?" No notifications appeared, and there was no sign of anything happening. Moments later, suddenly, the quest was marked as completed, startling Sejun. Mission reward. You have received Aileen's 100th birthday commemorative fountain. Huh? He couldn't believe his eyes. What in the world was this? While the farmer was frowning in confusion, a giant black shadow was dropped from the sky at a terrifying speed. Its shadow was so large that it darkened Sejun's face. The shift in light made him look up in shock, along with Black Rabbit beside him, who stared with an expression of disbelief. It was too close. The group hurriedly tried to flee. Sejun's face turned pale, his legs stumbling as he nearly fell, but the enormous dragon statue crashed down right beside them, creating a massive shockwave that felt like they were in the center of an earthquake. In truth, the statue was dropped near where Sejun had been standing rather than directly above him, but the young man and the little ones were just as terrified. Only Kwang found it thrilling. He liked these kinds of dangerous games. "What is that?" He dropped his straw hat, half crawling, half kneeling on the ground with a wary look. This gigantic statue, what was it? Apart from the enormous dragon shape, the area around it had a radius of about 3 meters, making the statue as large as a real fountain. No wonder Eileen had warned him to perform it far from the house, or the house would have collapsed. To answer Sejun's question, a hissing sound suddenly came from the statue's mouth. Unexpectedly, a stream of clear blue water gushed out, pouring down below. It turned out to be an item with a full description under the name Aileen's 100th birthday commemorative fountain. The great black dragon Kaiser Fritani commissioned the dwarves to create this fountain to commemorate the 100th year of Aileen Fritani's birth. Made entirely from premium black marble, it was crafted by the dwarves based on the image of the great black dragon Fritani. The eyes of the statue were made from magic stones, personally enchanted by black dragon Anton Fritani. The fountain had the ability to create water on its own or draw water from any source within a 10-kilometer radius. Commissioner, the great black dragon Kaiser Fritani. Craftsman, the dwarf king and his subordinates. Grade S, skill, water creation level 50. All related stats were marked with question marks, appearing to be beyond Sejun's understanding. The fountain quickly filled up, and the sound of trickling water surrounded the statue's base, making everyone's eyes widen in amazement. Sejun's face was still full of concern as before. It was indeed a big and good reward, but from now on, whenever Eileen said something was big, he had to be careful. Her big meant gigantic to him. A notification popped up beside him. stating that the tower manager thought the fountain would reduce the time spent watering the fields. Sejun immediately let out an "oh," realizing she was right. Lately, the fields had expanded too much, and the rabbits' watering cans were a bit limited. "Now we won't have to climb up and down the caves anymore," he exclaimed. "Thank you so much for being considerate about me, Aileen. But why are the other fountain skills censored?" Aileen didn't know either. The one who gifted it, her grandfather, had never told her. She had never used it, so she hadn't questioned it. Sejun asked again, "Then how does it generate water?" 2 system notifications appeared, informing him that there was no usage limit because it was an installable item. Aileen said to call up the fountain's status window because the control system came along with the reward. Sejun let out another "oh." Hearing that there was no usage limit was excellent news. "So, shall we set up the control settings?" As he extended his hand and channeled a bit of mana, a strange object appeared right in front of him. It had buttons like a game console, along with 2 small wings, allowing it to float at his eye level. This was the magic fountain controller. He could freely control the water's power, direction, and range, as well as the statue's own movements, using the controller. Sejun held it in his hand, small and compact like a game controller, and stared in astonishment. "I can really move the statue with this? Amazing." Placing both thumbs on the 2 blue buttons, Sejun gave a slight nudge. A faint hissing sound came from the dragon's head. It was clearly made of stone, but it moved gently, gradually bringing its neck along, as if the dragon's head were turning in another direction. Sejun saw it following his finger's command, and couldn't help but let out a delighted "oh." Not only could it tilt side to side, but the head could also go up and down according to Sejun's wishes. Both arms and legs could be moved too, making the entire stone statue look like a small toy for a moment. "That's awesome!" It felt like he was playing with a game character. Kwang excitedly tugged at Sejun's pants. "Dad, are you the one moving it?" Black Rabbit in the back joined in. "I want to try too, Pyak!" Getting used with the controls, Sejun was able to bring the dragon statue to the ground, following the directions of the 4 kids. They all pointed to the left, watching as the dragon's large arm mimicked the movement perfectly, pointing in that direction right away. The kids enjoyed it and tried a more challenging pose. The right leg planted down, the left leg raised high while the arm waved around. The dragon statue still smoothly imitated it. Everyone laughed joyously, thrilled to bits, until suddenly, the dragon's head lowered and let out a long, blaring sound. Quack, 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 quack. The kids were so startled, they jumped up. The gray rabbit wanted to run away, but Kwang's battle instinct was quicker. He swung his arm, slapping the stone statue's face with a loud, resounding smack. At that moment, everyone, including Kwang, realized something was wrong. A cracking sound came from the dragon's horn, snapping right off the statue. Several black fragments flew out, leaving the bear gaping in shock, while his father was stunned to the core. Sejun screamed in horror as if he had seen a ghost, more accurately, as if he had seen the horn fall off the stone statue. At that time, Aileen was wrapped in a green onion blanket, holding a cup of something, sitting on a bed as soft as cotton, when suddenly the orb emitted a blinding white light, different from usual. It vibrated, buzzing urgently, calling its owner to come and see. Only when her dragon claw tapped it did the orb return to its normal state. It was a danger alert, but what had happened? A system message appeared behind Sejun. The tower manager asked what was going on, making him look around guiltily like a thief caught red-handed. "Ah, Aileen?" Sejun's eyes widened as he stared at the notification without blinking, while his mouth let out an awkward, "Ha-ha!" His left hand pretended to support the dragon's head naturally, while his other hand rested on his hip, his body twisted to one side, but he forced himself to respond. "No, nothing's wrong. This statue is so cool that we were taking a closer look." The kids had stiff smiles on their faces, fake laughing just like Sejun. She didn't notice much, only seeing a rabbit hiding both hands behind his back, giggling "peek," and merely thought they were playing some kind of game. Sejun quickly changed the subject. "Haha, Aileen, aren't you hungry? Do you want to eat something tasty?" The notification instantly displayed a yes. Aileen was successfully distracted, having no way to notice the crack on the dragon's horn that had been glued back together. The rabbit architect hid his hammer behind his back, not daring to show any trace of what had just happened. Aileen leaned back on her soft, fluffy bed, not questioning why Sejun had brought an entire large bowl filled with food today. Carrots, sweet potatoes, and regular potatoes were piled high to the brim, making Aileen very happy. As she chewed noisily, she smiled. It's a relief that Sejun likes it. Meanwhile, he was sighing in relief, wiping the beads of sweat from his forehead. It's a relief that she didn't catch on. Now that he was familiar with controlling the dragon statue, watering the vast fields would be a breeze. On the 67th floor, the cleanup efforts from the Red Locusts' attack were nearing completion. The Silver Wolf clan cleared an area of land and piled the bodies of the Red Locusts onto carts, making space for the Lizard clan to plant blade green onions against a possible return of the destroyer. With a lot of work to do, most of the Silver Wolf tribe members had been mobilized, but usually the children stayed back in the wolf village, except for the chief's son. Elka's son had asked his father to let him collect the Red Locusts' bodies, and he immediately agreed. Don't go too far, son. There were many warriors, including his father and the lizard soldiers, who would protect the boy. Once the child was a little distance away, the mother wolf whispered to her husband, "You said experience is important, but is it all right to take the kids to such a dangerous place?" Elka frowned slightly and explained to his wife, "I know what you're worried about, but it's safe now that they're being subdued because they keep trying to eat the tough blade green onion. It's just that there are a lot of them due to their simple behavior of moving in groups. We've figured out their attack patterns and timing." Looking around where the onion fields were being planted, Elka reassured his wife. Most importantly, the harvesting of the red locusts will only take place while the lizard men are replacing the wilted blades. So if something happens, they will protect us. Gently placing his hand on his wife, he added, "So don't worry too much, my wife." His wife smiled at Elka, fully trusting him. The young boy didn't dare go too far, staying on the outskirts of the onion fields, where he suddenly found a whole locust body. Unlike the others, whose legs and bodies were cut into different pieces, this complete locust made the boy delighted. He shouted loudly, "Dad! Mom! There are many perfectly fine red locusts here." He was proudly showing off, not realizing that the locust in his hand was still very much alive. And behind him, where the sky turned a deep crimson, a swarm of mature locusts surged forth in a wave, rushing toward the boy. "Son!" Elka and his wife screamed in horror. They were too far away to reach him in time, and the boy was already within the locust's attack range. He had no idea how to defend himself or run away, his mouth hanging open in shock. Suddenly, a sharp blade swooped in from nowhere, slicing through the air with a swift swish, swish, swish. The glimmering blade flashed, and the locusts were immediately cut into pieces. Standing in front of the boy was a lizard warrior, fully armored, who had just executed the masterful slash. With a vigilant gaze fixed on the red locusts swarming toward them, he grabbed the boy who was sobbing, his ears drooping pitifully. He had narrowly escaped death. The lizard warrior, sword in hand, ordered, "Everyone, run! The red locusts are changing their attack method." From the sky, a forest of red surged, millions of locusts forming a gust-like stream, threatening to sweep away the entirety of the 67th floor.